Every morning, I make my coffee the same way. 2 scoops of Folgers. Not the fancy kind my daughter-in-law insists on buying for herself. Just plain, honest coffee. Water just below boiling. If it hisses, you've already ruined it. I pour it into my old ceramic mug. The one with a chipped handle my wife refused to throw away for 20 years. I kept it. Some habits outlive the people who taught them. At 6:30 a.m., the house is quiet. The refrigerator hums. The clock above the stove ticks louder than it should, like it's trying to prove it still matters. I sit at the small kitchen table by the window, the one facing the maple tree in the backyard, and I drink my coffee slowly. That's the only time of day that belongs to me. By 7:15, I hear her footsteps. Light, quick, deliberate. Patricia never walks without purpose. Even in slippers, she sounds like she's heading somewhere important. "Oh, you're up already," she says, stopping in the doorway. Always the same line. Always that same tone, pleasant, but just a little surprised, as if she didn't expect me to still be functioning. "I've been waking up at 6 since 1982. I reply without looking up. She laughs politely. She always laughs politely. Patricia is my son Daniel's wife, 38 years old, real estate agent, always on her phone, always calculating something behind those careful smiles. When my wife, Margaret, passed in March of 2021, Patricia was the first one to step in. "You shouldn't be alone, Dad," she said, placing a hand on my shoulder during the reception after the funeral. "Come stay with us, just until things feel normal again." Normal. That word doesn't mean much after 52 years of marriage ends in a hospital room that smells like antiseptic and resignation. But I moved in anyway. It was supposed to be temporary. That was nearly 3 years ago. "Did you take your medication?" Patricia asks now, opening the stainless steel refrigerator. Inside, everything is labeled. Containers with dates. Little sticky notes. Organization that borders on obsession. "Yes," I say. She pauses, glances at me, then nods. Not because she believes me, because she's decided it's not worth checking right now. "Daniel has a meeting this morning," she continues, pulling out almond milk. "I'll handle your bank stuff today, okay?" The electricity bill came in higher again. There it is. Always casual. Always helpful. "I can look at it," I say, stirring my coffee. "Oh, don't worry about it," she replies quickly. Too quickly. It's confusing online. They changed the interface again. I built electrical systems for 37 years. Designed half the grid in this county. But apparently, I can't understand a utility bill. "I'll manage," she adds, already turning away. I nod. I always nod, because arguing with Patricia is like trying to nail smoke to a wall. She doesn't fight. She redirects. Soft voice, steady tone. And suddenly, you're the unreasonable one. At 8:10, Daniel comes down the stairs, adjusting his tie. Phone pressed to his ear. Yeah, move the closing to Thursday," he says, barely glancing at me. "No, I don't care what the seller wants." He walks past, grabs a protein bar, kisses Patricia on the cheek. "Morning, Dad," he says, already halfway out the door. Morning. The door closes. Silence returns, but it's different now, thinner. Patricia sits across from me, her tablet lighting up her face. "I transferred $3,200 from your savings yesterday," she says, not looking up, "just to cover some household expenses. Groceries, utilities, a few things for the house." I freeze just for a second. $3,200. That seems like a lot, I say carefully. She sighs, not loudly, just enough. "Well, everything is expensive now," she replies. "And you live here too, remember?" I look down at my coffee. It's gone cold. "I suppose I do," I say. What I don't say is this. I paid off this house in 2009. Every brick, every wire, every inch of it. And somewhere along the way, without a single argument or raised voice, I stopped being the owner and became the expense. If you believe older voices still matter, support this channel with a like and a subscription. The first time I noticed the numbers didn't add up was April 14th, 2023. I remember the date because it was the day I replaced the batteries in the smoke detector in the hallway. It chirped every 40 seconds, sharp and accusing, like it knew something I didn't. I was standing on a chair, one hand on the ceiling, the other holding the plastic cover, when Patricia called from the kitchen. "Dad, don't strain yourself. You could have asked me." "I've been climbing ladders since before you were born," I said. She laughed. Again, polite. That evening, after dinner, grilled chicken, overcooked vegetables, quinoa that tasted like cardboard. I went to my room and sat down at the small desk by the window. The same desk I'd used back in 1998 to help Daniel with his algebra homework. The laptop sat there, open, waiting. Patricia had set it up for me months ago. Everything you need is bookmarked, she'd said. Banking, insurance, medical records. Just click. Simple. Too simple. I clicked. The bank website loaded slowly, like it was reluctant to tell me the truth. Username saved. Password saved. Convenient. The balance appeared in the top right corner. $487,213.06. I stared at it. Then I blinked. Then I leaned closer, as if the numbers might rearrange themselves out of embarrassment. $487,213.06. 3 months earlier in January, I had $603,000 in change. I knew because I'd written it down, January 3 RD 9:15 a.m. after checking my annual statement. Old habits. Documentation. Precision. Now, I clicked transactions. The list unfolded like a confession. February 2nd, transfer. $8,500. External account. February 15th, transfer. $12,000. External account. March 3rd, transfer. $5,750. Home improvement. March 19th, transfer. $9,200. Consulting services. April 5th, transfer. $14,000. Real estate deposit. My mouth went dry. External account. No names. Just numbers. I scrolled further. Dozens of entries. Clean. Clinical. Efficient. Like someone had been draining me with a syringe instead of knife. The door creaked behind me. You're still up? Patricia's voice. I didn't turn immediately. I let the screen sit there, glowing in the dark. Yes, I said. Couldn't sleep. She stepped closer. I could feel her eyes on the screen before I even moved. Oh, she said lightly. You're checking your account. I turned then, slowly. Patricia, I said, what is this? No accusation. Just a question. She didn't flinch. That was the impressive part. She walked around the desk, leaned slightly, her perfume, something floral and expensive, cutting through the stale air of the room. Oh, those? She said, pointing casually. That's just me moving money around. Moving where? For investments, she replied, as if explaining something obvious to a child. Daniel and I talked about it. Your money shouldn't just sit there losing value. My money, I repeated. Yes, she smiled. Our family's money. There it was, not loud, not aggressive, just redefined. I don't remember agreeing to that, I said. She sighed again, that same measured sigh. Dad, we've been over this. You said you trust us to handle things. Remember after your doctor appointment in February? You said you didn't want to deal with financial stress anymore. I did remember that appointment. February 10th, Dr. Klein. Blood pressure slightly elevated. He'd suggested reducing stress factors. I didn't realize that included surrendering 6 figures. That doesn't mean... It means exactly that, she interrupted gently. Still smiling. We're helping you. Helping. I looked back at the screen. $14,000. Real estate deposit. For what property? I asked. Oh, just a small investment, she said quickly. Something Daniel's working on. Under whose name? Silence. Just for a second. Then, does it matter? She asked. Yes, it mattered. It mattered more than anything in that moment. But I didn't say it. Instead, I leaned back in the chair and rubbed my eyes. I'm just trying to understand, I said quietly. And I'm trying to make things easier for you, she replied. You shouldn't have to worry about numbers at your age. At your age. There it was again. Not an insult. Not directly. Just a gentle lowering of expectations. I'd like to see the accounts, I said. You can't, she nodded. Eventually. It's just a bit complicated right now. There are tax implications, transfers, timing. Always timing. Always later. She placed a hand on my shoulder. Warm. Firm. Controlled. Trust me, she said softly. Everything we're doing is for you. For me. I nodded. Because that's what I've been doing for months. Nodding. Agreeing. Letting things slide past me like water under a bridge I no longer owned. But something had shifted. A small crack. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just enough. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, listening to the refrigerator hum, The distant sound of Patricia's late-night phone calls drifting through the walls. Yes, we can move another 15 next week. He won't notice? Just finalize it under my LLC. LLC. That word stayed with me. Sharp, precise, legal. I got up at 2:17 a.m., turned on the desk lamp, and pulled out an old notebook, the kind with lined pages and a cheap blue cover. I wrote one sentence. April 14th, 2023. Money is leaving faster than it should. Then I added another. Find out where. Because for the first time since Margaret died, I wasn't confused, I wasn't forgetful, and I wasn't done. By April 20th, I had a routine. It's funny how quickly a man can adapt when he finally understands the rules of the game being played against him. I woke up at 6:00, made my coffee, sat by the window, nodded when Patricia spoke, forgot things when it was convenient for her to believe I forgot, and I started paying attention. Not loudly, not suspiciously, quietly, like I used to do when diagnosing electrical faults in a system that didn't want to be understood. You don't tear the wall down. You listen. You measure. You observe where the current goes when no one's looking. On April 22nd, at exactly 9:42 a.m., Patricia left the house in a hurry. Heating contractors coming at 11, she said, grabbing her keys. Just don't open the door for anyone else. Okay? Of course, I replied. The door closed. Her car pulled out of the driveway. And for the first time in weeks, the house felt honest. I stood there for a moment in the kitchen, listening. Refrigerator, clock, silence. Then I moved. Her office was at the end of the hallway, a room that used to be Daniel's bedroom. Now it smelled like printer ink, perfume, and ambition. The door wasn't locked. It never is when people don't believe you're capable of walking through it. Her desk was immaculate, laptop centered, notebook stacked, a gold pen aligned perfectly with the edge. Control everywhere. I sat down slowly and opened the laptop. Password, of course. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then typed. Daniel 1987. Wrong. Then Patricia Realty. Wrong again. I leaned back. People like Patricia don't use random passwords. They use something meaningful, something they believe belongs to them. I looked around the room. On the wall, framed license. Patricia Coleman, licensed real estate broker, state of Illinois, issued June 12, 2018. June 12th. I typed 061218. The screen blinked, opened. I smiled, not because it was clever, because it was predictable. Her email was already open. Dozens of unread messages, listings, clients, contracts. And then I saw it, a folder labeled investments. No password, just confidence. Inside, spreadsheets, clean, organized, detailed. I opened the first one. Asset allocation. Coleman Family Holdings. Family. There it was again. Column A, date. Column B, amount. Column C, source account. Column D, destination. Column E, notes. I scrolled. February 2nd, $8,500. My savings account, PC Holdings, LLC. February 15th, $12,000. My savings account, PC Holdings, LLC. March 3rd, $5,750. My savings account, renovation. Rental unit 14B. March 19th, $9,200. My savings account, consulting fee, D. Coleman. April 5th, $14,000. My savings account, down payment. Condo, Title P. Coleman. Title P. Coleman. Not Daniel. Not family. Her. I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Clarity. I opened another file. Projected returns. 2023 to 2026. Rental income. Property appreciation. Flip margins. Every dollar mapped out. Every profit calculated. None of it in my name. I leaned closer to the screen. At the bottom of the spreadsheet, a note. Once full control established, consolidate remaining assets, $480K EST, into primary holding account. Full control. Remaining assets. I exhaled slowly. So that was the plan. Not helping. Not managing. Extracting. Systematically. I heard a car door outside. My heart didn't race. That surprised me. Instead, I closed the laptop gently, exactly the way I found it, and stood up. By the time Patricia walked back into the house, 7 minutes earlier than expected, I was in the kitchen, rinsing my mug. Oh, the contractor canceled, she said. Rescheduled for Friday. Ah, I nodded. That's a shame. She watched me for a moment. Everything okay? She asked. Of course, I said. Why wouldn't it be? She smiled, satisfied. That evening, Daniel came home later than usual, 9:18 p.m. I know because I started writing things down. Times, dates, patterns. He dropped his keys on the counter, loosened his tie. Long day, he muttered. Good day, I asked. Productive, he said. Patricia appeared from a hallway. How did the closing go? She asked. Great, he said, pouring himself a drink. We're up about 30 on that one. 30,000. I sat at the table quietly. Nice, Patricia said, smiling. We'll move another 15 this week then. Daniel nodded. Yeah, he hasn't said anything. There was a pause, a small one. About what? Patricia replied to, casually, the accounts. I kept my eyes on my plate. Silence stretched. Then, he wouldn't understand even if he tried. Patricia said softly, it's better this way. Better. I looked up then, just briefly. Daniel didn't meet my eyes. He took a sip of his drink instead. That was the moment, not the spreadsheets, not the numbers. That, because numbers can be explained, documents can be twisted, but silence is a decision. Later that night, at 11:03 p.m., I made a phone call. I hadn't spoken to Margaret's brother, Thomas, in over a year. He picked up on the third ring. Well, I'll be damned, he said. You still remember how to use a phone? I need a lawyer, I said. No small talk, no explanations, just truth. There was a pause. Then his voice changed. Sharp, focused. What kind? The kind that deals with theft, I said. Another pause. Family, he asked. Yes. He exhaled slowly. I know someone, he said. Good one, that's Chicago. Doesn't lose. Set it up. What's going on, he asked. I looked around the dark room, at the walls I paid for, at the life I thought I still had. They think I'm already gone, I said quietly. Thomas didn't laugh this time. Then you'd better prove them wrong. I intend to, I said. I hung up, sat there for a long moment, then opened my notebook again. April 22nd, 2023. They are not helping me. They are preparing to take everything. I paused, then added one more line. Let them think I don't see it. The meeting was set for May 3rd, 2023, 6 p.m. Patricia insisted on it. We should all sit down and talk about finances, she said over breakfast 2 days earlier, stirring her almond milk into coffee she never finished. Just make sure we're on the same page. Same page. That phrase again. Daniel nodded without looking up from his phone. Yeah, probably a good idea. I buttered my toast slowly. I agree, I said, and I meant it. May 3rd arrived warm and unusually bright for Wednesday, the kind of spring evening that makes people optimistic for no good reason. I spent the afternoon in my room, not resting, preparing. At 4:15 p.m., I reviewed the documents one last time. Printed copies, clean, highlighted, bank statements from January through April, every transfer circled in red, screenshots of Patricia's spreadsheets, courtesy of a USB drive I'd quietly filled over the past 10 days. Business registration records for PC Holdings, LLC, filed March 1st, 2023. Owner, Patricia Coleman. Not Daniel. Not family. Just her. At 5:02 p.m., my phone buzzed. Thomas, lawyer confirmed. Papers ready when you give the word. I typed back. Me tonight. Short. Efficient. No drama. Dinner was elaborate. Too elaborate. Patricia had made roasted salmon, garlic mashed potatoes, asparagus with lemon zest. A bottle of wine sat open on the table. Something expensive Daniel usually saved for clients. A performance. We sat down at exactly 6:03 p.m. I thought we could have a nice dinner first, Patricia said, smiling. No need to make this stressful. Of course, I said. Daniel raised his glass. To family, he said. I lifted mine. To clarity, I replied. He didn't notice the difference. Patricia did, just for a second. Her smile tightened. Then it was gone. We ate. Small talk. Work stories. Real estate chatter I'd heard 100 times before. At 6:41 p.m., Patricia set her fork down. So, she said lightly, folding her hands, let's talk about your accounts. There it was. I wiped my mouth with a napkin, took a sip of water. Then I stood up. Not quickly. Deliberately. I think that's a very good idea. I said. I walked to the counter, picked up a thin stack of papers, and returned to the table. Placed them down, right in front of her. What's this? She asked, still smiling. Clarity, I said. Daniel frowned slightly. Dad, what? February 2nd. I interrupted calmly. $8,500 transferred from my savings account to PC Holdings, LLC. Patricia didn't move, didn't blink. I continued. February 15th, 12,000. March 3rd, 5,750. April 5th, 14,000 for a condo titled under your name. Silence. Heavy now. Real. Daniel looked at Patricia, then at me. What is he talking about? He asked. Patricia exhaled softly. Dad, she said, her voice still controlled. We've been over this. No, I said. Just that. No. The word landed harder than I expected. We haven't, I continued. Because this, I tapped the papers, is not management. It's extraction. Daniel's face tightened. Patricia? She turned to him, calm as ever. It's investments, she said. We talked about this. I asked. She ignored me. Daniel, your father agreed. I agreed to pay bills, I said, not to fund your company. That did it. A flicker. Small, but there. Patricia's eyes sharpened. You're misunderstanding, she said. These are family assets. No, I said again. They're not. I reached into my pocket and placed a second document on the table. Business registration. Her name. Highlighted. PC Holdings, LLC. I said quietly. Filed March 1st, sole owner. Patricia Coleman. Daniel picked it up. Read it. Once. Twice. What the hell is this? He asked. Patricia's composure cracked. Just a hair. It's just how we structured things for tax purposes. In your name, he snapped. It's temporary. With my money, I added. The room shifted. Completely now. Daniel stood up. Patricia, he said, slower this time. How much? She hesitated. There it was. The moment everything balances on. How much? He repeated. Around 115,000, she said finally. I shook my head. Wrong, I said. I slid the final page toward him. Total transfers. $116,450 documented. $132,000 including pending transactions. Daniel stared at it. His hands didn't tremble, but his voice did. You took $130,000 from him. I invested it, she snapped, now the softness gone. For us. For our future. He wasn't using it. It wasn't yours to use, I said. Silence. Sharp. Clean. Then, a knock at the door. 3 firm strikes. 6:58 p.m. Right on time. Patricia frowned. Are you expecting someone? Yes, I said. Daniel looked between us. What's going on? I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. 2 people stood there. A man in a gray suit, mid-50s, calm eyes, and a uniformed officer beside him. Mr. Coleman? The man asked. Yes. I'm David Klein, attorney at law. He held up a folder. These are formal notices regarding unauthorized financial transfers, asset misappropriation, and an immediate injunction to freeze accounts associated with PC Holdings, LLC. Behind me, I heard Patricia stand up quickly. This is ridiculous, she said. You can't just... Oh, we can, Klein replied, stepping inside. And we just did. The officer followed. Professional. Silent. Daniel looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. Dad, he said. Barely audible. I turned back to the table, to both of them, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel old. I didn't feel confused. I didn't feel like an expense. I asked for clarity, I said. Then I met Patricia's eyes, and now we have it. The first thing Patricia did was laugh. Not loudly, not hysterically, just a short, sharp exhale through her nose, like she just heard something mildly inconvenient. This is insane, she said, crossing her arms. You're actually doing this? Over money? Over theft, my lawyer corrected calmly, stepping further into the dining room. He placed his folder on the table with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from years of watching people realize they've already lost. It's not theft, Patricia snapped. It's family funds. The officer shifted slightly by the door, not threatening, just present. Daniel looked from her to me, his face pale now, the color draining in stages like a slow leak. Patricia, he said, quieter this time. Just stop talking for a second. She didn't. You don't understand how this works, she continued, her voice tightening. Assets get moved, leveraged, reinvested. That's how you grow wealth. Sitting on $600,000 like it's 1985 isn't strategy. It's stupidity. There it was, not hidden anymore, not softened, just naked contempt. I watched her for a moment. This woman who had organized my kitchen, labeled my food, reminded me to take pills I didn't need half the time, all while quietly transferring my life into accounts with her name on them. You're right, I said. She blinked. I don't understand how your version of this works, I continued. Because in my version, if your name isn't on the account, you don't take the money. Daniel sank back into his chair. Jesus Christ, he muttered, running a hand over his face. My lawyer opened the folder. Mrs. Coleman, he said evenly, we have documentation of unauthorized transfers totaling approximately $132,000. We also have evidence that additional transfers were scheduled. That's not illegal if he gave consent, she fired back. Did he? Klein asked. She hesitated, just a fraction too long. That's what I thought, he said. He slid a second document across the table. Additionally, the court has approved a temporary freeze on all accounts associated with PC Holdings LLC, effective immediately. Any attempt to move funds after this point will be considered obstruction. Patricia's composure finally cracked. You went behind our backs, she said, looking at me now. Not calm, not controlled, angry. You called a lawyer instead of talking to us like a family. I did talk, I replied. You just preferred I didn't understand the answers. Daniel stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. How long, he asked her. She didn't respond. How long, Patricia? He repeated louder now. Since February, she said. Since February, he echoed. So for 3 months, you've been moving his money into your company? It's our future, she snapped. I was building something for us, for this family. With his money, he said. With money that was just sitting there. I shook my head slowly. It wasn't sitting, I said. It was mine. Silence. Heavy again, but different this time. Final. The next few days were efficient. There's no better word for it. On May 5th, at 10:00 a.m., I sat in a conference room downtown with Klein and 2 accountants. Clean table, bottled water, a view of a city that didn't care about any of this. We went through everything. Accounts, transfers, property records. The condo Patricia had put a down payment on, frozen. The rental unit she'd partially renovated, under investigation for misused funds. PC Holdings LLC, functionally dead. Best case, Klein said, adjusting his glasses. We recover the majority of the funds through asset liquidation and legal pressure. And worst case, I asked. We take her to court, he said simply. And we win. I nodded. Not because I enjoyed it, because I understood it. Daniel called me that night, 8:47 p.m. I let it ring twice before answering. Dad, he said, his voice raw. I didn't know it was this bad. I sat in my room. The same chair, the same desk. The house felt different now, quieter. She said it was investments, he continued. I thought it was in both our names. It wasn't, I said. I see that now. A pause. I'm sorry. I looked at the window. The maple tree outside. Leaves just starting to fill in for spring. I believe you, I said. And I did. That was the strange part. He wasn't the architect of this. Just the beneficiary who didn't ask enough questions. What happens now, he asked. That depends on her, I said. And the court. Another pause. She's staying with her sister, he added quietly. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. Take care of yourself, Daniel. You too, Dad. The line went dead. By June 12th, the numbers had settled. $118,000 recovered directly. Another $9,000 tied up in legal proceedings. The rest likely gone in fees, penalties, and whatever damage she'd done trying to move things too quickly. Patricia never called me. Not once. Her lawyer did. Twice. Settlement offers. Partial repayments. Attempts to avoid court. I declined all of them. Not out of spite. Out of principle. Because some things aren't about getting everything back. They're about making sure it never happens again. On a quiet morning in late June, I sat at the kitchen table. My kitchen table. The same chip mug in my hand. Same coffee. Same routine. But different. The house was empty now. Daniel had moved into an apartment closer to his office. Said he needed space. I didn't argue. Space can be useful. I looked around the room. At the walls. At the appliances. At the silence. And for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like something was being taken from me. It felt like something had been returned, piece by piece, dollar by dollar, truth by truth. I took a sip of my coffee. Still a little too hot. Still exactly the way Margaret used to make it. Patricia thought I was a lonely old man with $600,000 in savings. She was half right. I was alone, but I was never hers to spend. And, in the end, that was the only balance that mattered.